My ex claimed my invention as their own. I proved them wrong. The notification sound from my laptop made my stomach drop. Another Google alert for Navigate Ease, the app that was supposed to be mine. I clicked the link with trembling fingers, already knowing it would make my day worse. Tech prodigy Sarah Chin secures $2.3 million Series A for revolutionary accessibility app. There she was, smiling confidently from the TechCrunch homepage in her perfectly pressed blazer, standing next to a slide that showed my algorithm. My fucking algorithm. The one I'd spent 18 months perfecting in my cramped studio apartment, surviving on ramen and determination. The one I'd excitedly explained to her during those late nights when we were still together, when I still believed she gave a damn about helping people with visual impairments navigate the world. The article made me sick. I've always been passionate about accessibility tech, says Chen, whose Navigate Ease uses groundbreaking spatial recognition algorithms to provide real-time audio guidance for users with disabilities. Always been passionate. Right. The same woman who used to roll her eyes when I'd work late, calling my project, that blind people app, like it was some hobby instead of something that could change lives. I scrolled down, my anger building with each paragraph. The funding round was led by Meridian Ventures, with participation from 3 other major VCs, $2.3 million. I'd been scraping together freelance web development gigs for 8 months, barely making rent on my $800 a month shoebox in Oakland, while Sarah was playing venture capital princess with my life's work. The worst part? She was actually succeeding. The app had launched 3 weeks ago and already had 15,000 downloads. The reviews were glowing. Users were calling it life-changing and revolutionary. Because it was revolutionary, I'd made sure of that. Every sleepless night I'd spent optimizing the spatial mapping, every weekend I'd tested prototypes with Marcus, my neighbor who'd been blind since birth, every line of code I'd written and rewritten until it was perfect. But according to the patent filed on March 15, 2023, Sarah Chin was the brilliant inventor. The filing date was burned into my memory, exactly 2 weeks after our relationship imploded, and coincidentally, 3 days after I'd shown her the complete working prototype. I opened my laptop and stared at my desktop folder labeled Navigate Ease_development. Inside were 847 files spanning 23 months of work. Code commits dating back to January 2022. Screenshots of my original wireframes. Audio recordings of my brainstorming sessions. Video demos I'd made for potential investors who'd ultimately passed, saying the market was too niche. Too niche for them, apparently, but not too niche for Meridian Ventures when Sarah pitched it. My phone buzzed. A text from my college roommate Jake. Dude, is this the app you were building? Saw the TechCrunch article. This girl's story sounds exactly like what you were working on. I stared at the message for a full minute before typing back, yeah. It's complicated. But it wasn't complicated at all. It was theft, plain and simple. Sarah had taken my idea, my code structure, even my user interface design, and somehow convinced the world she'd invented it. She'd leveraged her Stanford MBA and family connections to get meetings I couldn't get, used her polished presentation skills to pitch concepts I created. The really twisted part. If she'd just asked to partner with me, I probably would have said yes. Back then, I was so desperate to get Navigate Ease into the world that I would have accepted junior partner status just to see it help people. Now, watching her accept congratulations for my work, I felt something cold and calculating settle in my chest. Sarah wanted to play startup founder. Fine. Time to show her what intellectual property theft really costs. I spent the next 3 hours diving through my development files with the methodical precision of a forensic accountant. Every commit to my private GitHub repository was timestamped. Every design iteration was logged. Every conversation with Marcus about user experience was documented in my obsessively detailed project notes. The evidence was overwhelming and damning. My first commit for Navigate Ease was dated January 18, 2022, at 2:47 a.m. Sarah and I had only been dating for 6 weeks then. I remember that night vividly. She'd fallen asleep on my couch while I coded, complaining about the clicking of my mechanical keyboard. The commit message read, Initial Spatial Mapping Algorithm, Breakthrough with Corner Detection. Sarah's patent filing claimed she'd begun development in February 2023. A full year after I'd already built the core functionality. But the real smoking gun was buried in my email archives. On September 23, 2022, I'd sent Sarah a detailed technical overview of Navigate Ease, complete with architectural diagrams and pseudocode for the machine learning model. The subject line, Babe, finally cracked the real-time processing issue. Check this out, party popper. Her response, sent 14 minutes later, looks amazing. Can't wait to hear you pitch this to investors. You're going to change the world, Alex. Love you, Red Heart. I screenshot that email exchange with hands that were no longer shaking. The fury had crystallized into something sharper, more focused. My phone rang. Marcus. Hey man, you see this Navigate Ease thing blowing up on Twitter? His voice carried the excitement of someone who'd been waiting years for this technology to exist. I just downloaded it and holy shit, Alex. It's incredible. The audio cues are so intuitive, and the way it handles complex intersections, it's exactly like what you described when you were building your prototype. This Sarah Chen lady is a genius. The irony was suffocating. Yeah, I saw the article. You should reach out to her company. I bet they'd hire you in a heartbeat. Your accessibility work was heading in the exact same direction. You two could probably collaborate on some amazing stuff. I closed my eyes. Marcus had spent dozens of hours testing my early builds, providing feedback that shaped every major feature. He joked about being my first beta user, making me promise he'd get a lifetime premium subscription when I launched. Marcus, I said carefully, what if I told you that app you just downloaded, what if it was based on my prototype? The one you helped me test. Silence stretched for nearly 10 seconds. What do you mean, based on? I mean stolen. Completely. The algorithm, the UI, even the specific audio cue patterns we developed together. Sarah didn't invent any of this, she took it from me after we broke up. Jesus Christ. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. Are you serious? Dead serious. I'm looking at my development files right now. I have everything documented going back 23 months. That's. Marcus paused, and I could hear him processing. Alex, if this is true, this is massive intellectual property theft. We're talking millions of dollars. You need to lawyer up immediately. I was already 3 steps ahead of him. Before calling Marcus back, I'd researched intellectual property attorneys in San Francisco. David Kim at Hartwell and Associates specialized in tech IP cases and had a track record of going after venture-backed startups. His consultation fee was $500, money I didn't have, but money I'd find somewhere. I'm on it, I told Marcus. But I wanted you to know first. You helped build this thing too. Whatever you need, man. Documentation, testimony, whatever. That app changed my morning commute in one day. If someone stole that from you. His voice hardened. We're going to bury them. After hanging up, I started drafting an email to David Kim's office. Subject, urgent IP theft case, venture-backed startup using stolen algorithm. This was about to get very expensive for Sarah Chin. David Kim's office occupied the 32nd floor of a glass tower that probably cost more per month to rent than I'd made all year. I sat in the sleek waiting room, my laptop bag containing what I hoped was 2 years' worth of evidence, trying not to think about the $500 consultation fee I'd borrowed from my credit card. Mr. Rodriguez? A woman in an immaculate gray suit appeared. Mr. Kim will see you now. David Kim looked younger than I'd expected from his website photo, maybe 40, with sharp eyes behind designer glasses. His office overlooked the bay, and I tried not to calculate how many billable hours that view represented. So, he said, settling behind his desk, IP theft involving a venture-backed startup. Tell me everything. I walked him through the timeline. The development history, the patent filing dates, the email exchanges with Sarah. Kim's expression grew more interested as I showed him my documented evidence. This is thorough, he said, scrolling through my GitHub commits. Almost obsessively so. That works in our favor. He paused at the September email exchange. And she responded positively to your technical details. She said I was going to change the world. Kim leaned back. Patent filed March 15th, you said. Let me look something up. His fingers flew across his keyboard. After a few minutes, he frowned. Interesting. The patent application lists a co-inventor. My stomach dropped. What? Richard Valdez. Listed as contributing the core spatial recognition framework. Kim's frown deepened. You know this name. I didn't, but something about it nagged at me. Can you find out more about him? Kim's fingers worked again. Valdez, here we go. PhD in computer science from MIT, specialized in spatial computing. Currently listed as CTO at NavigateEase. He turned his monitor toward me. Ring any bells? The LinkedIn profile photo showed a guy about my age with dark hair and tired eyes. Still nothing. But then Kim clicked through to the work history, and my blood turned to ice. He worked at Chin Dynamics from 2021 to early 2023, Kim read aloud. That's interesting timing. Chin Dynamics. Sarah's father's company. The one she'd been trying to get me to interview at during the last months of our relationship, before everything fell apart. Oh fuck, I breathed. What? My mind was racing, connecting dots I'd been too hurt and angry to see. Sarah kept pushing me to apply for a developer position at her dad's company. Said they were working on innovative projects, that I'd be perfect for their R&D team. I kept putting it off because I wanted to finish NavigateEase first. Kim's eyebrows rose. You think this Valdez had access to similar technology? No. The pieces were clicking together with horrible clarity. I think Sarah fed him my ideas. Look at the timeline, Valdez was at Chin Dynamics when I was building my prototype. Sarah could have passed along my technical details, and he could have independently verified the feasibility, maybe even built supporting components. I pulled out my phone, scrolling frantically through old text messages. There, August 2022. Sarah asking detailed questions about my algorithm's performance metrics. September, her wanting to know about my training data sets. October, asking if I'd consider collaborating with other developers who might have complementary expertise. I'd thought she was being supportive. She'd been building a fucking patent application. This changes things significantly, Kim said quietly. If there was a coordinated effort between Chen and Valdez to develop a competing implementation using your disclosed methods. Is that worse than regular theft? Much worse. We're potentially looking at conspiracy to commit patent fraud. And if Chin Dynamics has any assets tied up in NavigateEase. Kim smiled grimly. Corporate liability changes the damages calculation considerably. I felt dizzy. What kind of damages? Hard to say without discovery, but given the venture funding and current valuation, we could be looking at 8 figures. Kim closed his laptop. Mr. Rodriguez, I'm going to be direct. This case could take 18 months and cost you $200,000 in legal fees if it goes to trial. My heart sank. I don't have that kind of money. I know. But I do contingency work for cases this strong. 35% of any settlement or judgment. Kim extended his hand. I think we can not only get your invention back, I think we can make Sarah Chin very, very sorry she ever met you. I shook his hand, feeling something predatory unfurl in my chest. When do we start? We start with a cease and desist, Kim said, already pulling up a document template on his computer. But first, I need you to do some homework. I want you to download NavigateEase and document every similarity to your original prototype. Screenshots, feature comparisons, even the error messages if they match. We need to build an airtight technical comparison. I nodded, but something was bothering me. What if they've made changes? Improvements that weren't in my original code? Even better. We can argue they used your foundation to build upon, that's still derivative work. Kim's fingers paused over his keyboard. But Alex, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest. Did you ever sign anything with Sarah? Any informal partnership agreements, NDAs, even a napkin where you sketched out profit-sharing ideas? The question hit me like ice water. My mind raced back through our relationship, trying to remember every conversation about Navigate Ease. No, nothing formal. But I trailed off as a memory surfaced. But what? Last December, we were talking about what would happen when I launched. She kept joking about being my business advisor since she had the MBA and I was just a genius developer. She even made this comment about how couples who build companies together either get rich or break up, never both. Kim's expression darkened. Did she ever put that in writing? Texts, emails. I was already scrolling through my phone. Most of our text history was deleted. I purged it after the breakup in a fit of emotional self-preservation. But my email archive went back further, and there. December 18, 2022. Found something, I said, reading the email chain. She sent me an article about startup founder couples. Her comment was, this could be us when Navigate Ease takes off. I promise I'll only take a tiny advisory equity stake, winking face, maybe 20%. I kid, or do I? Thinking face. And you responded. I scrolled down. I said, you can have all the equity you want when we're married. Right now you get free beta testing and dinner dates funded by my ramen budget. Kim was quiet for a long moment. That's actually not terrible for us. It establishes that you considered Navigate Ease entirely your project, and that any potential future involvement from her was contingent on marriage, not partnership. Relief flooded through me, followed immediately by a fresh wave of anger. Sarah had been planning this for months. The jokes about equity stakes, the questions about my technical architecture, even the pressure to interview at her father's company, it had all been research. There's something else, I said, remembering. In January, right before we broke up, she asked me to send her a complete technical specification. Said she wanted to understand my work better, be more supportive. I sent her a 40-page document with everything, algorithm flowcharts, database schemas, even my go-to-market strategy. Kim actually smiled at that. Perfect. When did you send it? I found the email. January 28, 2023. 2 weeks before our breakup, 6 weeks before her patent filing. And the subject line. For my future wife, Navigate Ease complete technical overview. God, I was such an idiot. No, Kim said firmly. You were in love with someone you trusted. That's not idiotic, it's human. But it's also evidence of disclosure under expectation of confidentiality. He started typing rapidly. Alex, this document might have just won us the case. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Heard you're making noise about Navigate Ease. Might want to reconsider. You know how small the tech world is. I showed Kim the message. His smile turned predatory. And now we have intimidation attempts. Sarah Chin just made the biggest mistake of her life. Kim stood up. I'm filing an emergency motion for a temporary restraining order to prevent destruction of evidence. This case just became my top priority. Outside Kim's office window, Sarah's world was about to collapse, and she had no idea it was coming. The restraining order was filed at 4:47 p.m. on a Friday, which meant Sarah wouldn't know about it until Monday morning when she tried to access Navigate Ease servers. Kim had explained the strategy over coffee after leaving the courthouse. Weekend filings bought us time before their legal team could respond, and server access logs would show us exactly what they tried to delete once they realized they were in trouble. I spent Saturday obsessively documenting every aspect of the Navigate Ease app. What I found made my stomach churn with a mixture of rage and vindication. They hadn't just stolen my algorithm, they'd copied my error messages verbatim. The specific phrasing I'd used for audio prompts, the fallback behaviors when GPS signal was weak, even the goddamn loading screen animation. It was my code wearing Sarah's branding like a cheap disguise. But Sunday brought complications I hadn't anticipated. Marcus called at 8 a.m., his voice tense. Alex, we have a problem. I got a call last night from someone claiming to be a journalist. Said they were investigating Navigate Ease technology origins and wanted to interview me about beta testing experiences. My blood went cold. What did you tell them? Nothing. But here's the thing, they knew details they shouldn't have known. Specific feedback I'd given you about the intersection audio cues, even the joke I made about the app having a sexy robot voice. Marcus paused. How would a random journalist know that? They wouldn't. My mind raced. Someone's been digging through my files. That's what I figured. But Alex, there's more. They knew my full name, my address, and the fact that I've been beta testing since last spring. They offered me $5,000 for an interview about my experience with early accessibility navigation apps. The implications hit me like a freight train. Sarah's team wasn't just playing defense, they were trying to build a counter-narrative. If they could get Marcus on record talking about testing early accessibility apps, in general terms, without specifically mentioning me, they could muddy the waters about who developed what when. Please tell me you didn't agree to anything. Hell no. But Alex, someone's been watching us. They knew too much. I called Kim immediately. He answered on the second ring, which probably meant he'd been expecting this. They're conducting opposition research, he said after I explained the situation. Standard practice when facing an IP challenge of this magnitude. The fact that they're moving this fast means they're scared. Or it means they have resources I can't compete with. Both can be true. I heard typing in the background. But this gives us leverage. Attempting to compromise potential witnesses before discovery even begins. Their legal team must be desperate. That afternoon, Jake texted me a screenshot that made everything worse. Sarah Chin responds to patent controversy, a TechCrunch article I definitely hadn't seen coming. The article was masterfully crafted character assassination. Sarah positioned herself as a successful female entrepreneur being targeted by a disgruntled ex-boyfriend who couldn't handle her success. She claimed I'd been a minor contributor to early brainstorming sessions but that the core innovation came from her collaboration with industry veteran Richard Valdez. The quote that made me see red, it's unfortunate when personal relationships end badly, but I won't let someone's inability to move on damage the incredible work we're doing for the disability community. Navigate Ease has already helped thousands of users, and we won't be distracted by baseless legal threats from someone who's bitter about our success. She'd somehow gotten the story out before our restraining order became public, framing the narrative as a vindictive ex trying to destroy a woman-led startup. The comments section was full of people defending her against the typical male tech bro trying to steal credit from a female founder. My phone rang. Kim. You see the article? I'm reading it now. She's making me look like a stalker. That's the point. But she made a critical error. Kim's voice carried barely contained excitement. She published specific technical details to support her claims, details that directly contradict her patent filing timeline. I scrolled down to find what he meant. There it was, Sarah describing the breakthrough moment when she and Valdez solved the real-time processing challenges in early February 2023. My email to her about cracking the real-time processing issue was September 2022, I said, understanding immediately. Exactly. She just perjured herself in a national publication. And there's something else, I had my investigator run background on Richard Valdez. Turns out he left Chin Dynamics under some interesting circumstances. What kind of circumstances? The kind where he signed a very expensive non-disclosure agreement and immediately moved to a cabin in Mendocino for 3 months before suddenly emerging as Navigate's CTO. Kim paused. Alex, I think we're looking at more than just IP theft. I think Richard Valdez was the inside man, and something went very wrong at Chin Dynamics that they paid him to keep quiet about. My hands were shaking again, but this time it wasn't from fear or anger. It was anticipation. What's our next move? We destroy them, Kim said simply. I'm calling an emergency press conference for Tuesday morning. Time to tell your side of the story. The press conference was scheduled for Tuesday at 10 a.m., but Monday night brought a curveball that changed everything. I was in my apartment, rehearsing my statement for the 100th time, when my laptop chimed with an encrypted email from an address I didn't recognize, proximity alert 2021@protonmail.com. Alex, you don't know me, but I know what Sarah and Richard did to you. I used to work at Chin Dynamics. We need to talk. Tomorrow, 7 a.m., Pete's Coffee on University Avenue in Palo Alto. Come alone. Trust me, you want to hear this. A friend. I stared at the message for 5 minutes before forwarding it to Kim. His response came back in 30 seconds, do not go alone. I'll meet you there at 6:45. This could be a setup, but if it's legitimate, it might be the break we need. Tuesday morning, Kim and I sat in the corner booth of Pete's, both nursing oversized coffees and watching every person who walked through the door. At exactly 7:03, a woman in her mid-30s approached our table. Asian American, wearing jeans and a Stanford hoodie, with the tired eyes of someone who hadn't slept well in months. Alex Rodriguez, she asked quietly. I nodded. I'm Jennifer Liu. I was Richard Valdez's project manager at Chin Dynamics until March. She slid into the booth across from us, glancing nervously toward the door. I sent the email. Kim leaned forward. What exactly do you know about Navigate's? Jennifer pulled out her phone and set it on the table, screen down. Everything. I know about the stolen code, the backdated documentation, and why Richard really left Chin Dynamics. She looked directly at me. But first, I need to know, how detailed were the technical specs you sent Sarah in January? 40 pages. Complete algorithm documentation, database schemas, UI wireframes. Everything. Jennifer closed her eyes. Jesus. That explains how they did it so fast. Did what? Kim's pen was already out, ready to take notes. Built the parallel implementation. See, Richard wasn't just working on spatial recognition at Chin Dynamics, he was specifically tasked with developing accessibility applications after Sarah told her father about your project. Jennifer's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. Mr. Chin assigned Richard to reverse engineer what you were building based on Sarah's descriptions. The goal was to beat you to market. My coffee cup hit the table harder than I intended. Are you saying this was planned from the beginning? Not from the beginning. But definitely from October 2022. I have the project authorization paperwork. Jennifer reached into her purse and pulled out a manila folder. Internal emails, development timelines, budget allocations, everything. Kim grabbed the folder and started flipping through pages. His eyebrows climbed higher with each document. Holy shit. This is a conspiracy charge waiting to happen. It gets worse, Jennifer continued. When you sent Sarah that complete technical spec in January, Richard was able to fill in the gaps they'd been struggling with. But here's the problem, Richard's implementation was sloppy. He cut corners, used outdated libraries, and introduced security vulnerabilities that could expose user location data. I felt sick. How bad are we talking? Bad enough that Chin Dynamics killed the project and buried Richard's code in March. That's why he left the company. They paid him $200,000 to sign an NDA and disappear until the liability issues were resolved. Jennifer pulled out another document. But Richard kept copies of everything. When Sarah approached him about Navigate's, he saw it as a way to monetize 2 years of work that Chin Dynamics was too scared to release. Kim was scribbling notes frantically. So the current Navigate's app contains the security vulnerabilities? Unless they've done a complete rewrite in the past 6 weeks, yes. And based on the code snippets I've seen in their marketing materials, they're definitely still using Richard's flawed implementation. Jennifer leaned back in her seat. There are 15,000 people using an app that broadcasts their precise location to any server that knows how to ask for it. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just about stolen intellectual property anymore, there were genuine safety concerns for vulnerable users who depended on Navigate's for daily navigation. Why are you telling us this? I asked. Jennifer's expression hardened. Because I spent 8 months trying to fix Richard's security holes, and when I raised concerns about user privacy, I was told to focus on functionality over paranoid edge cases. When I saw the TechCrunch article about Navigate's funding, I realized they'd actually launched the unsafe version. She looked directly at me. People with visual impairments are using an app that could put them in real danger, and Sarah Chin is too busy counting venture capital money to care. Kim closed the folder. Jennifer, are you willing to testify about what you've told us? I'm willing to do more than that. She pulled out a USB drive and set it next to her phone. Richard wasn't the only one who kept copies of the Chin Dynamics files. I had the complete development archive, including the security audit that recommended the project be terminated. I picked up the USB drive, feeling its weight. Such a small thing to contain the destruction of Sarah's carefully constructed lies. Our press conference is in 3 hours, Kim said, checking his watch. Jennifer, how quickly can you prepare a statement about the security vulnerabilities? Already done. She smiled grimly. I've been waiting months for someone to ask the right questions. As we left the coffee shop, I realized Sarah's nightmare was just beginning. And this time, I had the ammunition to finish what she'd started. The press conference room was packed beyond capacity. I sat at a table facing dozens of reporters, cameras, and phone screens held up to record every word. To my left, Kim shuffled through his prepared statements. To my right, Jennifer Liu sat with the calm composure of someone who'd been waiting months to detonate a bomb. But it was the back corner of the room that made my pulse spike. Sarah Chin stood against the wall, flanked by 2 men in expensive suits who had to be her legal team. She'd shown up to my press conference, probably expecting to watch me humiliate myself with unprovable accusations. She was about to get the shock of her life. Kim opened with the basics, the timeline, the stolen emails, the patent fraud. Standard IP theft allegations that would have made decent tech blog fodder. But then he nodded to Jennifer, and the room's energy shifted completely. Ladies and gentlemen, Jennifer began, her voice carrying clearly through the microphone, I'm here to discuss a matter of public safety that goes far beyond intellectual property disputes. The Navigate application, currently being used by over 15,000 people with visual impairments, contains critical security vulnerabilities that expose users' precise locations to potential predators. The room erupted in murmurs. I watched Sarah's face drain of color. Jennifer continued methodically, explaining the flawed implementation, the buried security audit, the $200,000 hush payment to Richard Valdez. With each revelation, Sarah looked smaller, more cornered. Then Jennifer played her ace. I have here internal communications from Chin Dynamics, dated October 15, 2022, in which CEO Robert Chin explicitly authorizes the reverse engineering of what he calls Rodriguez's accessibility project based on intelligence provided by his daughter. Jennifer held up the document. The email subject line reads, Project Intercept, beat the boyfriend to market. The phrase, beat the boyfriend to market, hit the room like a physical force. Reporters started shouting questions, camera flashes intensified, and I saw Sarah whisper something urgent to her lawyers. One of the reporters in front called out, MS. Lou, are you alleging that Navigate was built using stolen code? I'm stating as fact that Richard Valdez's implementation at Chin Dynamics was reverse engineered from Alex Rodriguez's disclosed technical specifications, and that the same flawed code base was used to build Navigate. Jennifer's voice never wavered. I'm also stating that Chin Dynamics terminated the project specifically because of security vulnerabilities that put users at risk. A hand shot up from the middle of the room. What kind of risks are we talking about? Jennifer pulled out her laptop. The app broadcasts user coordinates every 30 seconds to validate navigation accuracy. However, the encryption protocol has a known exploit that allows any server to request and receive that location data. Someone with basic programming skills could track every Navigate user in real time. The room went dead silent for about 3 seconds, then exploded into chaos. Reporters were shouting over each other, phones were ringing, and I caught sight of Sarah pushing toward the exit with her legal team. Kim leaned into the microphone. We're calling for an immediate investigation by the FTC into both the patent fraud and the privacy violations. We're also demanding that Navigate be removed from app stores until the security issues are resolved. A reporter near the back called out, Mr. Rodriguez, what do you want from Sarah Chin? I looked directly at the camera that seemed to be getting the clearest shot. I want my invention back, and I want the people who trusted Navigate to be safe. Sarah stole 2 years of my life's work and turned it into something that could genuinely harm the disability community I was trying to help. After the press conference, Kim and I retreated to his office to watch the media explosion unfold in real time. The story was everywhere within 2 hours. Hashtag Navigate scandal was trending on Twitter. TechCrunch had posted a follow-up article with the headline, From Unicorn to Scandal, How Navigate became Silicon Valley's latest fraud case. But the story that made me smile was buried in the middle of a Reuters business brief. Meridian Ventures calls emergency board meeting on Navigate's investment. Sarah's $2.3 million was about to become a very expensive problem. My phone started buzzing at 6 a.m. Wednesday morning, barely 12 hours after the press conference. The first call was from a blocked number that went straight to voicemail. Then another. By the time I stumbled to the coffee maker, I had 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. The voicemail that made me wide awake was from Marcus, Alex, turn on Channel 7 News. Now. I fumbled for the remote and caught the tail end of a breaking news segment. Federal investigation launched into Navigate following yesterday's explosive allegations. The FBI's white-collar crime division has reportedly seized servers from both Navigate's headquarters and Chin Dynamics as part of a joint investigation with the FTC. FBI. Federal investigation. I sat down hard on my couch, still processing the magnitude of what we'd set in motion. My laptop chimed with an email from Kim, emergency meeting. 9 a.m. Big developments overnight. I made it to Kim's office in 45 minutes, fueled by pure adrenaline and gas station coffee. He was already there with Jennifer and someone I didn't recognize, a woman in her 50s wearing a federal badge. Alex Rodriguez, Kim said, meet Special Agent Catherine Walsh, FBI Financial Crimes Unit. Agent Walsh stood to shake my hand. Her grip was firm, her expression unreadable. Mr. Rodriguez, your case has become significantly more complex overnight. We need to discuss what you know about Chin Dynamics' other business activities. I looked at Kim, confused. Other activities? Jennifer leaned forward. After yesterday's press conference, 3 other former Chin Dynamics employees contacted the FBI. Turns out the Navigate's theft wasn't an isolated incident. She pulled out a tablet and showed me a spreadsheet. Chin Dynamics has been systematically stealing intellectual property from small developers for at least 18 months. Your case was just the biggest success story. The spreadsheet showed dozens of entries, project names, developer names, estimated market values. My Navigate's project was listed third from the top, with an estimated value of $3.7 million. Agent Walsh consulted her notes. We've identified at least 12 other cases where Chain Dynamics employees were instructed to develop personal relationships with independent developers, gather technical intelligence, and file competing patents. The total estimated value of stolen IP approaches $30 million. My head was spinning. Sarah was running cons on other developers. Sarah was part of a larger operation, Agent Walsh corrected. We believe Robert Chen was directing the scheme, with Sarah and at least 4 other employees acting as intelligence gatherers. Your case broke it open because you had the most comprehensive documentation. Kim set down his coffee. Agent Walsh, what does this mean for our civil case? It means you're looking at federal RICO charges in addition to patent fraud. Racketeering changes the damages calculation significantly. Walsh turned to me. Mr. Rodriguez, we need your complete cooperation. Every email, every text message, every interaction you had with Sarah Chen regarding your project. I nodded, but something was bothering me. Agent Walsh, if this was such a large operation, how did they get away with it for so long? Her expression darkened. Because they were smart about victim selection. Solo developers without resources to fight back, projects in emerging markets that wouldn't attract immediate attention, and they always filed patents just early enough to create reasonable doubt about timeline. She paused. Until yesterday, we didn't have anyone with your level of documentation. Jennifer's tablet chimed with a notification. She glanced at it and smiled grimly. Speaking of documentation, you're going to love this. Navigate's just pushed an emergency app update that supposedly enhances security protocols. Want to guess what they actually did? Kim raised an eyebrow. Fix the vulnerabilities you exposed. Partially. But here's the beautiful part, the update metadata shows they used Alex's original security implementation from his GitHub repository. They literally stole his fixes for the problems they created by stealing his code in the first place. Agent Walsh looked up sharply. They accessed his private repository? Must have. The specific error handling and encryption methods in today's update match Alex's commits from last October, not anything Richard Valdez built at Chain Dynamics. Jennifer turned her tablet toward us. They're so panicked about the security scandal that they've now committed additional IP theft to fix their first IP theft. I started laughing, actual, uncontrollable laughter that bordered on hysteria. They stole my code to fix the problems in my stolen code. Are you kidding me? Kim was already pulling up his laptop. That's a second federal crime committed while under investigation for the first federal crime. Sarah Chen just guaranteed herself prison time. Agent Walsh stood up. Mr. Rodriguez, I need you to come with me to document this additional theft. We're going to need forensic evidence of the unauthorized repository access. She handed me a business card. Congratulations. You just became the key witness in what might be the largest IP theft ring in Silicon Valley history. As we left Kim's office, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You have no idea what you've started. This won't end well for you. R. Richard Valdez was apparently feeling talkative. I showed the message to Agent Walsh. She smiled for the first time since I'd met her. Witness intimidation. That's strike 3. She pulled out her phone. Time to make some arrests. The arrest warrant for Richard Valdez was executed at 6:23 a.m. Thursday morning at his Mendocino cabin. I know the exact time because Agent Walsh called me from the scene, her voice carrying barely contained satisfaction. He tried to run, she said over the sound of car doors slamming. Made it about 50 yards into the woods before our agents caught up. But here's the interesting part, he was carrying a laptop bag with what appears to be the complete Chain Dynamics development archive. I was sitting in my apartment, still processing the fact that this had escalated to federal arrests. He kept everything. Everything. Source code, internal emails, financial records, even recorded phone calls with Sarah Chen discussing the patent applications. Walsh paused, and I heard her talking to someone in the background. Alex, Richard wants to make a deal. He's offering to testify against the entire Chen family operation in exchange for reduced charges. The irony was perfect. Richard Valdez, the man who threatened me less than 18 hours ago, was now begging to flip on his co-conspirators. What kind of deal? Cooperation agreement. Full disclosure of the IP theft scheme, testimony about Sarah's role, and surrender of all stolen assets. Walsh's voice hardened. But there's something else. Richard claims Sarah stole proprietary code from other Chain Dynamics projects to enhance Navigate's, code that belongs to third-party clients. My stomach dropped. Meaning what? Meaning Navigate's might contain stolen intellectual property from multiple sources, not just yours. We're talking about a potential copyright violation affecting Fortune 500 companies who contracted with Chain Dynamics. I heard papers rustling. Alex, this case just got exponentially larger. By noon, the news had exploded across every tech publication. Navigate's founder arrested in multi-million-dollar IP theft ring dominated TechCrunch's homepage. But the headline that made my blood run cold was from the Wall Street Journal, Chain Dynamics under federal investigation for corporate espionage. Corporate espionage. The phrase carried implications far beyond startup drama and patent disputes. This was about systematic theft from established companies, potentially involving defense contracts and sensitive technologies. Kim called at 1:15 p.m. with an update that changed everything again. Alex, we have a problem. Sarah Chen's legal team just filed a motion claiming you're not the original inventor of the Navigate's algorithm. His voice was tense. They're alleging that your core spatial recognition framework was derived from open source code published by a MIT research group in 2019. I nearly dropped my phone. That's impossible. I built everything from scratch. I know that, but they've submitted code comparisons that show similarities between your implementation and the MIT project. Specifically, the corner detection methodology and the audio processing pipeline. Kim paused. Alex, did you reference any academic papers when you were building the algorithm? My mind raced back to the early development phase. Of course I did. I read probably 50 papers on spatial computing and accessibility technology. That's normal research, not theft. The MIT paper they're citing, do you remember it? I was already pulling up my development notes, searching for academic references. Yes, I remember. Patel and Morrison, real-time spatial mapping for accessibility applications. But I only used their theoretical framework as a starting point. My implementation was completely different. Different how? Their approach required constant internet connectivity and processed everything server-side. Mine was designed for offline functionality with edge computing. The underlying algorithms are completely different, even if the high-level concepts are similar. I found my original research notes. Kim, I documented every paper I referenced. I have notes explaining exactly how my approach differed from existing academic work. Good. Send me everything. But Alex, this is a serious accusation. If they can convince a judge that your work was derivative of MIT research, it undermines our entire case. After hanging up, I spent 3 hours combing through my development archive, cross-referencing every algorithm I'd written against the academic papers I'd studied. The similarities Sarah's team had identified were real but superficial, the kind of overlap you'd expect when multiple researchers tackle the same problem space. But as I dug deeper into the MIT paper, something caught my attention. The authors thanked several contributors in their acknowledgement section, including Ark Valdez of Chin Dynamics for technical consultation and implementation feedback. Richard Valdez had contributed to the MIT research that Sarah was now claiming I'd plagiarized. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. Sarah and Richard weren't just accusing me of theft, they were using Richard's own academic connections to create false evidence of prior art. If they could convince a court that my algorithm was derivative of MIT work that Richard had helped develop, they could claim legitimate ownership of any improvements. I called Agent Walsh immediately. Agent Walsh, I need to know something about Richard Valdez's cooperation agreement. Is he required to disclose his involvement in academic research projects? All relevant professional activities, yes. Why? I explained what I'd found in the MIT paper. Walsh was quiet for a long moment. Alex, if Richard contributed to research that he's now claiming you plagiarized, while knowing that you developed your algorithm independently. She trailed off. That's not just perjury. That's evidence fabrication. What does that mean for the case? It means Richard Valdez's cooperation agreement just got a lot more expensive for him. I heard typing in the background. I'm sending agents to MIT right now to interview the paper's authors. If Richard helped create the very research he's using to discredit you, this entire defense strategy falls apart. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Dude, are you seeing the news? Sarah Chen just held a press conference claiming you stole from MIT researchers. This is insane. I turned on the live stream just in time to see Sarah, flanked by her legal team, reading from a prepared statement. Mr. Rodriguez's accusations are part of a disturbing pattern of claiming credit for other people's work. We have evidence showing that his Navigate-Ease prototype was built using algorithms published by MIT researchers in 2019. The reporter questions came fast and aggressive. But Sarah handled them smoothly, positioned now as the victim of a vindictive ex-boyfriend who himself was guilty of academic plagiarism. Watching her perform for the cameras, I realized Sarah Chen had just made the biggest tactical error of her life. She doubled down on a lie that could be disproven with a single phone call to MIT. And thanks to Richard Valdez's cooperation agreement, we had all the evidence we needed to destroy her credibility permanently. The call from MIT came at 7:42 a.m. Friday morning, just as I was reviewing Agent Walsh's latest briefing materials. Professor Janet Morrison's voice carried the kind of academic precision that could slice through legal bullshit like a laser. Mr. Rodriguez, I understand there's some confusion about your work in our 2019 paper on spatial mapping accessibility, she said without preamble. Agent Walsh asked me to call you directly. I set down my coffee, suddenly wide awake. Professor Morrison, I want to be clear, I referenced your theoretical framework but developed my own implementation approach. I have documentation showing. Mr. Rodriguez, please stop. Her tone wasn't angry, just tired. Richard Valdez contacted me 3 days ago, asking detailed questions about our acknowledgement section and claiming you'd stolen our algorithms. But here's what Richard apparently forgot, I have every email he sent us during the research phase. My heart started hammering. What kind of emails? Emails where he explicitly stated he was working on a competing commercial implementation of our concepts for Chin Dynamics. Emails where he asked us to withhold certain technical details from publication because his company was pursuing patent protection on similar methods. Professor Morrison paused, and I heard papers rustling. Mr. Rodriguez, Richard Valdez didn't just contribute to our research. He tried to manipulate our publication to benefit his own commercial interests. The implications hit me like a freight train. He was already planning to steal spatial mapping technology back in 2019. It appears so. But there's more. After speaking with Agent Walsh yesterday, I compared the code samples from your GitHub repository with Richard's contributions to our project. Your implementation is not only completely different from our academic prototype, it's also far more sophisticated than anything Richard provided to us. Her voice carried a note of professional admiration. Frankly, Mr. Rodriguez, your offline processing approach solves problems that our research couldn't address. I was scribbling notes frantically. Professor Morrison, would you be willing to testify that my work wasn't derived from your research? I'd be willing to testify that your work represents a significant advancement over both our academic prototype and Richard Valdez's contributions. In fact, I'd like to discuss licensing your approach for our next research phase, assuming you survive this legal mess. After hanging up, I immediately called Kim with the news. His reaction was everything I'd hoped for. Alex, this is devastating for their defense. Not only did you not plagiarize MIT research, but Richard was actively trying to corrupt that research for commercial gain 4 years ago. I heard him typing rapidly. I'm filing a motion to compel discovery of all Chin Dynamics communications with academic institutions. If they've done this before. My laptop chimed with an encrypted email from Jennifer Liu. Alex, emergency. Sarah's team is trying to access the Chin Dynamics servers before the FBI forensic analysis is complete. They filed some kind of motion claiming attorney-client privilege over the development files. Can you meet me at the federal building at 2 p.m.? Agent Walsh needs you there. The federal building in downtown San Francisco felt like a fortress, all concrete and security checkpoints. Agent Walsh met me in the lobby, her expression grimmer than usual. Sarah Chen's attorneys are claiming that all Chen Dynamics development files are protected by attorney-client privilege because they consulted lawyers before filing patents, she explained as we walked toward the elevators. It's a desperate move, but if successful, it could lock us out of the smoking gun evidence. Jennifer was waiting in the conference room, surrounded by boxes of printed documents and looking like she hadn't slept in days. Alex, I need you to look at something. Sarah's privilege claims include files that predate any legal consultation by 6 months. She handed me a printout of a file directory listing. These are the Chen Dynamics server logs from October 2022. Notice anything interesting about the timestamp patterns? I scanned the document, focusing on the dates and access times. Someone was accessing the NavigateEase project files at 2 a.m. consistently for 3 weeks in November. Not someone. Sarah Chen specifically, using her remote access credentials. Jennifer pulled out another document. But here's the beautiful part, the attorney consultation she's claiming privilege for didn't happen until December 8th. She was accessing stolen development files for weeks before any lawyer was involved. Agent Walsh smiled grimly. Privilege doesn't apply to ongoing criminal activity. If Sarah was accessing files related to IP theft before consulting counsel, those files remain fair game for our investigation. My phone buzzed with a news alert, breaking, NavigateEase removed from App Stores pending security review. The alert was followed immediately by a text from Marcus, Alex, the app just disappeared from my phone. Got a notification saying it was being temporarily suspended for security updates. Is this your doing? I showed the message to Agent Walsh. Her smile widened. FTC moved faster than expected. As of 1 hour ago, NavigateEase is officially banned from distribution until they can prove user data isn't being compromised. She consulted her watch. Sarah Chen's $2.3 million investment just became worthless. The call came at 11:47 p.m., jolting me from the first decent sleep I'd had in weeks. Agent Walsh's voice was tense, urgent in a way that made my stomach clench. Alex, we have a situation. Sarah Chen just boarded a flight to Singapore. One-way ticket, purchased 3 hours ago with cash. I sat up in bed, instantly awake. She's running. Looks that way. But here's the problem, she cleaned out the NavigateEase accounts before she left. All $1.8 million remaining from the venture funding, gone. Transferred to 3 different offshore accounts in the past 6 hours. The room felt like it was spinning. Can you stop her? The plane's already in the air. We're working with international authorities, but Singapore doesn't have an extradition treaty for white-collar crimes under $50 million. Walsh paused, and I heard voices in the background. Alex, there's something else. Richard's cooperation just became a lot more valuable. He claims Sarah threatened him yesterday, said she'd pin everything on him if the case went to trial. I was already getting dressed, adrenaline overriding exhaustion. What kind of threats? According to Richard, Sarah told him she had fabricated evidence that would make him look like the mastermind behind the entire operation. Financial records showing payments to his personal accounts, forged emails discussing the IP theft scheme, even planted evidence in his cabin. Walsh's voice hardened. If Richard's telling the truth, Sarah was planning to sacrifice everyone else to save herself. My phone buzzed with an incoming call from Kim. I put Walsh on speaker and answered. Alex, please tell me you're seeing the news, Kim said without preamble. TechCrunch just published Sarah's farewell statement. She's claiming she's fleeing the country because of death threats from obsessed ex-boyfriends and their online harassment campaigns. I felt sick. Even in running away, Sarah was spinning the narrative to make herself the victim. Kim, what does this mean for our case? Civil case becomes much more complicated if the defendant is in a non-extradition country. But the good news is that her fleeing actually strengthens our criminal case. Flight demonstrates consciousness of guilt. Kim paused. Agent Walsh, are you there? I'm here. Kim, we need to move fast on asset recovery. Sarah might have fled, but NavigateEase servers are still here, along with the Chen Dynamics facilities. If we can prove the stolen IP-generated revenue, we can freeze whatever assets she couldn't move offshore. Agent Walsh's phone started ringing. She glanced at it and her eyebrows shot up. It's Robert Chen. Sarah's father. She answered on speaker. Robert Chen's voice was strained, older than I'd expected. Agent Walsh, I need to speak with you immediately. My daughter, she's made some very serious mistakes, and I believe I can help your investigation. Mr. Chen, anything you say can be used against you. I'd recommend consulting with an attorney before. Agent Walsh, my daughter stole $3.2 million from Chen Dynamics accounts before she left the country. She's destroyed my company's reputation and implicated me in crimes I had no knowledge of. His voice cracked slightly. I'm not calling to protect her. I'm calling because I want to cooperate fully with your investigation. The silence stretched for nearly 10 seconds. Finally, Agent Walsh spoke. Mr. Chen, we'll need to conduct this conversation officially. Can you come to the federal building tomorrow morning? I'm in the parking garage right now. I have boxes of documents that Sarah doesn't know I copied. Financial records, communication logs, everything. Robert Chen's voice carried the weight of a man watching his world collapse. Agent Walsh, my daughter turned our legitimate business into a criminal enterprise, and she was planning to blame me for all of it. I looked at Kim, seeing my own shock reflected in his expression. Sarah hadn't just burned her bridges, she'd torched everyone who'd ever trusted her. Agent Walsh was already heading for the door. Mr. Chen, stay in your vehicle. I'm sending agents to escort you inside right now. She turned to me. Alex, Sarah Chen just made her biggest mistake yet. When you betray your co-conspirators and steal from your own family, they tend to want revenge. My phone lit up with a Reuters alert. NavigateEase founder flees country amid federal investigation, $2.3 million VC funding missing. Sarah was gone, but her empire was about to come crashing down from the inside. The emergency shareholders meeting at Meridian Ventures was scheduled for 8 a.m. Monday morning, but by 7:30, the lobby was already swarming with reporters. I sat in Kim's BMW across the street, watching venture capitalists in $1,000 suits hurry past camera crews with their heads down and phones pressed to their ears. "There's managing partner David Kellerman," Kim said, pointing to a silver-haired man practically jogging toward the building's side entrance. He led the Series A round. Probably having the worst week of his career right now. My phone buzzed with a text from Agent Walsh. "Robert Chen interview complete. You're going to love what we found. Call me in 20 minutes. Jennifer Liu slid into the back seat, carrying a laptop bag and looking grimmer than usual. "Alex, we have a major problem. I just finished analyzing the financial records Robert Chen provided to the FBI. Kim turned around. "What kind of problem?" "The kind where Sarah didn't just steal your algorithm, she used it to defraud multiple investor groups." Jennifer opened her laptop and showed us a spreadsheet. Sarah pitched NavigateEase to 7 different VC firms over 6 months. But she told each firm they were getting exclusive due diligence access. I stared at the numbers. She raised money from multiple sources for the same funding round. Worse. She raised $2.3 million from Meridian, but also secured commitment letters for another $4.1 million from 3 other firms. All based on the same stolen technology, all promised the same equity stakes. Jennifer scrolled down. "Alex, Sarah was planning to take $6.4 million total and disappear with the money before anyone realized they'd been scammed." The implications were staggering. This wasn't just IP theft anymore, it was securities fraud on a massive scale. Kim was already dialing his phone. "I need to speak with the Meridian legal team immediately. If other VC firms were defrauded using Alex's stolen algorithm, they become victims too. That changes our damages calculation exponentially." My phone rang. Agent Walsh. "Alex, Robert Chen's cooperation just broke this case wide open. Sarah didn't just steal from you, she's been running a systematic fraud operation for 18 months. Walsh's voice carried barely contained excitement. "Chen Dynamics has been filing fraudulent patent applications, creating fake development timelines, and selling the same stolen IP to multiple buyers." I felt dizzy. How many victims are we talking about? At least 47 individual developers, 12 corporate clients, and now potentially 8 different investment firms. Papers rustled in the background. "Alex, your case isn't just about one stolen app. It's about a criminal enterprise that's defrauded the tech industry out of an estimated $47 million. Through Kim's windshield, I watched chaos erupting at the Meridian building. Police cars were pulling up, and agents in FBI windbreakers were escorting people in handcuffs toward unmarked vehicles. "Agent Walsh, are you making arrests at Meridian?" 3 Meridian partners just admitted to accepting bribes from Sarah Chen in exchange for expedited funding approval. They knew the due diligence timeline was impossible unless the technology already existed. Walsh paused. Sarah was paying VC partners under the table to approve funding for stolen IP. Kim grabbed my arm. "Alex, do you understand what this means? If Meridian's partners were knowingly funding stolen technology, their entire firm becomes liable for damages. We're not just suing Sarah Chen anymore, we're suing a $2 billion venture capital fund." My head was spinning. What started as a simple IP theft case had exploded into racketeering charges, securities fraud, international wire fraud, and now bribery of venture capitalists. The scope was almost incomprehensible. Jennifer's laptop chimed with an urgent email notification. She read it and went pale. "Guys, we have another problem. Singapore authorities just contacted the FBI. Sarah Chen never entered Singapore. She changed planes in Tokyo and boarded a connecting flight to a non-extradition country." Jennifer looked up from her screen. "She's in Russia. Moscow, specifically." My phone exploded with news alerts as the story broke in real time across every major outlet. Sarah Chen hadn't just fled the country, she defected to a place where American law enforcement couldn't touch her. But she'd left behind a trail of destruction that was about to make me very, very rich. The call from David Kellerman came at 2:47 p.m., just as I was processing the news about Sarah's escape to Moscow. Meridian Ventures' managing partner sounded like a man who'd aged 10 years in 10 hours. "Mr. Rodriguez, I need to speak with you urgently. Not through lawyers, not through intermediaries. Just you and me." His voice carried the kind of desperation that comes with watching a billion-dollar reputation crumble in real time. "Can you meet me at my office in 30 minutes? I looked at Kim, who was shaking his head vigorously while mouthing, "Absolutely not." But something in Kellerman's tone made me curious. This was the man who'd written Sarah a $2.3 million check based on my stolen work. "Mr. Kellerman, anything you want to discuss can go through my attorney. Please. 5 minutes. I have information about Sarah's operation that could change everything." He paused, and I heard sirens in the background. "Mr. Rodriguez, Sarah Chen didn't just steal from you. She stole from us too, and I think I know where she hid the money." Against Kim's frantic objections, I agreed to meet at a neutral location, the Starbucks across from Meridian's offices. Kellerman showed up looking like he'd slept in his suit, his usually perfect silver hair disheveled and his hands shaking slightly as he stirred his coffee. "Sarah played us all," he said without preamble. "But she made one crucial mistake. She thought she was smarter than everyone in the room." I stayed quiet, letting him talk. "The $2.3 million we invested? Sarah told us it was going toward development and hiring. But our finance team tracked the money, and less than $400,000 went to legitimate business expenses." Kellerman pulled out his phone and showed me a banking summary. The rest was moved through shell companies we didn't know existed. My pulse quickened. What kind of shell companies? Fake consulting firms, overseas development contractors, equipment purchases from non-existent suppliers. Sarah created an entire fictional business ecosystem to justify moving investor money offshore. He scrolled through more documents. "But here's what she didn't know, we have forensic accountants who specialize in tracking venture fund disbursements." Kellerman turned his phone toward me, showing a complex flowchart of money transfers. "We can trace every dollar. Singapore, Cyprus, the Cayman Islands, and finally, Moscow. Sarah's been building an exit strategy for months." I felt a cold smile spreading across my face. "Mr. Kellerman, why are you telling me this? Because Meridian Ventures is about to face the largest investor lawsuit in Silicon Valley history. 8 different VC firms are claiming we knew about the IP theft and participated in the fraud. His voice dropped to a whisper. But if we can prove that we were victims too, if we can show that Sarah stole from us just like she stole from you. The pieces clicked together. Kellerman wasn't trying to help me, he was trying to save his own skin by positioning Meridian as another victim instead of a co-conspirator. What exactly are you proposing? Partnership. Meridian's forensic accounting team, our legal resources, our international connections, all focused on tracking down every dollar Sarah stole and bringing her back to face justice. Kellerman leaned forward. Mr. Rodriguez, Meridian Ventures has a $2 billion fund and relationships with law enforcement agencies in 47 countries. Sarah Chen picked the wrong firm to defraud. My phone buzzed with a text from Agent Walsh. Alex, urgent. Russian authorities just contacted FBI. Sarah Chen was found dead in her Moscow hotel room. Apparent suicide. Need you at Federal Building immediately. The coffee cup slipped from my hands, shattering on the concrete sidewalk. Sarah was dead. The woman who'd stolen my life's work, destroyed dozens of careers, and defrauded millions of dollars had taken her own life in a Moscow hotel room rather than face the consequences of what she'd built. Kellerman was staring at my phone screen, his face going ashen. Is that? Sarah's dead. The words felt surreal coming out of my mouth. It's over. But as I looked at the complex money trail still glowing on Kellerman's phone, I realized it wasn't over at all. Sarah Chen was gone, but she'd left behind $47 million in stolen assets and a paper trail that led to every corner of the tech industry. The real reckoning was just beginning. The Federal Building conference room felt like a war room by Thursday afternoon. Agent Walsh had covered one entire wall with a timeline spanning 3 years, connected by red string like something out of a conspiracy thriller. Every stolen project, every fraudulent patent, every shell company transaction, all leading back to Sarah's operation. The Moscow hotel room search turned up something interesting, Walsh said, pulling out a sealed evidence bag containing a laptop. Sarah kept detailed records of everything. And I mean everything. Jennifer looked up from her own computer. How detailed are we talking? Spreadsheets tracking 47 different developers she targeted, including psychological profiles and relationship vulnerabilities. Financial projections for each stolen project. Even a goddamn scoring system rating which victims were most likely to stay quiet after being ripped off. Walsh's jaw tightened. She had Alex rated as a high-confidence target because of his emotional attachment to the project and low financial resources for legal action. The clinical calculation of it made my stomach turn. Sarah hadn't just stolen my work, she'd psychologically profiled me to determine how easily I could be destroyed. Kim was studying a printout of bank transfers. Agent Walsh, these Moscow accounts, how much money are we talking about? $12.7 million across 6 different banks. But here's where it gets interesting. Walsh pulled up a new document on her laptop. Sarah wasn't just stealing for herself. She was paying other people to help expand the operation. She turned the screen toward us, showing a list of names and payment amounts. Marcus Chen, Sarah's cousin, received $340,000 for talent identification at Stanford. Rebecca Morrison, no relation to the MIT professor, got $180,000 for technical assessment services at Berkeley. They were building a network of scouts to identify promising student projects before they could get patent protection. My phone started buzzing incessantly. I glanced at it and saw 17 missed calls from reporters, 6 from unknown international numbers, and 1 from someone listed as Tommy Chen. Who's Tommy Chen? I asked Agent Walsh. Her expression darkened. Sarah's younger brother. He's been trying to reach you for 2 days, claiming he has information about additional stolen projects. She consulted her notes. Tommy worked as a junior developer at Chin Dynamics until last month. Says he quit because he discovered what the family business really was. I looked at Kim. Should I call him back? Not without us present, Walsh interjected. Tommy Chin reached out to us yesterday offering to cooperate, but we're not sure if he's genuinely helping or trying to recover assets for the family. She pulled out another evidence bag containing a flash drive. What we do know is that he provided this, claiming it contains Sarah's insurance files, evidence she gathered on everyone involved in the operation. Jennifer practically lunged for the flash drive. What kind of evidence? Recorded phone calls, screenshots of private communications, financial records showing who knew what when. Walsh's phone started ringing. She glanced at it and frowned. It's the Singapore Financial Authority. Excuse me. While Walsh took her call, Kim spread out more documents on the conference table. Alex, I need you to see this. The forensic accounting report from Meridian came back, and it's devastating for everyone involved. The report was 3 inches thick, but Kim had bookmarked the critical sections. Navigate's generated $1.8 million in revenue during its 6 weeks of operation. But Sarah's shell companies charged the app $2.2 million for development and consulting services. She was literally moving investor money in circles to justify the offshore transfers. I flipped through pages of transaction logs. How is that even legal? It's not. But it gets worse. Kim turned to a highlighted section. The consulting payments went to companies allegedly based in Cyprus and Dublin. But the Meridian investigation tracked the actual work. It was all done by freelancers in Ukraine and Romania, paid less than $50,000 total. Agent Walsh returned, her expression grim. Singapore authorities just confirmed that Sarah created 14 shell companies using stolen identity documents from other Chin Dynamics victims. She wasn't just stealing intellectual property, she was stealing entire identities to build her money laundering network. The scope kept expanding in ways that made my head spin. This wasn't just about my app anymore. Sarah had built a criminal enterprise that touched dozens of countries and hundreds of victims. My phone buzzed with a text from Tommy Chen. Alex, saw the news about Singapore. Meet me tonight. I have proof that Sarah was planning something much bigger. Something that would have destroyed Silicon Valley's entire VC ecosystem. 9 p.m., Pier 39, by the Sea Lions. Come alone or Sarah's final plan goes live automatically. I showed the message to Walsh. Her face went completely white. Alex, we need to get you into protective custody immediately. The meeting with Tommy Chen at Pier 39 turned out to be the key to everything. Under FBI surveillance, he handed me an encrypted hard drive containing what he called Sarah's doomsday files, detailed plans to systematically destroy Silicon Valley's entire venture capital ecosystem through coordinated IP theft and market manipulation. She was going to tank the tech market, Tommy explained, his hands shaking as federal agents recorded every word. Sarah had identified over 200 promising startups and planned to steal their core technologies simultaneously, then short-sell their investors' portfolios right before exposing the thefts publicly. The files showed Sarah had recruited accomplices at 12 major VC firms, all taking payments to provide early access to due diligence materials on promising companies. She'd been building toward what she called Black Wednesday, a coordinated attack that would have wiped out billions in tech valuations while she profited from the chaos. But Sarah's death had triggered automatic deadman switches that began dumping evidence online. By Friday morning, the entire conspiracy was unraveling in real time across social media, with victims and co-conspirators being exposed hourly. The final tally was staggering: $73 million in stolen intellectual property, 47 individual developers defrauded, 18 companies whose technologies were compromised, and 8 VC firms facing criminal charges for accepting bribes. 6 months later, I stood in my new office in downtown San Francisco, the headquarters of Rodriguez Accessibility Technologies, funded by the $8.7 million settlement I'd received from Meridian Ventures and the recovered NavigateEase assets. The original app, rebuilt from my code and launched properly, now had 180,000 users and partnerships with 3 major transit authorities. Marcus walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee and grinning. The New York Times wants to interview you about the documentary Netflix is making. Something about the developer who brought down Silicon Valley's biggest fraud ring. I laughed, looking out at the bay through floor-to-ceiling windows that still felt surreal to own. Tell them I'm too busy building the company Sarah thought she could steal. My phone lit up with a notification from NavigateEase, a user review from someone in Detroit. This app changed my life. I can navigate my city independently for the first time in 20 years. Thank you for not giving up on this technology. That review was worth more than all of Sarah's stolen millions combined. The final justice came 8 months after Sarah's death, when Richard Valdez was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison for racketeering and conspiracy. Robert Chen received 6 years in forfeiture of Chen Dynamics assets, which were distributed to the defrauded developers. 3 Meridian partners got prison time, and the firm itself was dissolved, with its $2 billion fund redistributed to victims. But the sweetest vindication was personal. NavigateEase won the National Accessibility Innovation Award, with Marcus accepting alongside me as co-innovator for his crucial beta testing contributions. The prize ceremony took place exactly 2 years after I'd first seen Sarah's face on TechCrunch, claiming credit for my life's work. Standing at the podium, holding the award that recognized the app Sarah had tried to steal, I thought about her final text to me: "This won't end well for you." She'd been wrong about that too. My invention was back where it belonged, helping the people I'd always intended to serve. Sarah's criminal empire had collapsed, taking down everyone who'd enabled her. And I'd learned that sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to let someone else's betrayal stop you from changing the world. The app that was supposed to destroy me had instead exposed the biggest fraud in Silicon Valley history. I'd proven them wrong, all right.